Do you think that the younger generation or the future younger generations to come are more or less equipped to be able to handle the difficulties that they're facing?
Well, I hope I'm not going to upset anybody. I think we are the sandwich generation. We still remember our parents' plight. We remember a time, I mean, you're a lot younger than me, but I remember I did architecture and I did my first 2 degrees without the internet, without the computer. So it was a different world. We all say that people are so dependent on devices now that it's removed them from reality. And I think I do worry about this because I have a lot of young people in my life. And when you're too comfortable, a part of you stagnates. And I always see that through the lens of creativity, that one of the prerequisites for creativity is that you are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
When you get too cozy, it's like get up and disrupt your world, which is why traveling is so important. It's so important to get out of your everyday context and go into an uncomfortable context and eat different food and meet different people, because that's how you erode prejudices. So going back to your question, we live in a first world environment. London is supposed to be one of the most glamorous cities in the world, right? So we've got it good. The electricity never goes off. I know when I'm in India and I'm shampooing my hair, often the water's just gone off or the water's gone cold because the electricity's off. In Kenya, we've all grown up with buckets because there's not enough water in the water tank. Once our house was on fire and there was only one fire engine and it was being used somewhere else, so the fire people couldn't come, So that was part of our everyday growing up, and I think that makes you a lot flexible.
Yeah.
If something doesn't happen according to your expectations, you just shrug your shoulders and say, well, that's life.
And you find a way.
Yeah, whereas I feel, it's inevitable, but it can be a little bit concerning if we think that life is going to continue and suddenly one day when there is a crisis, are we, and by we I mean especially the next generation, are they psychologically and physically prepared? I can't speak for everybody, but from my perspective, I think they're in for a bit of a shock because they haven't seen hardship.
I mean, there's so many different ways to term this. It's called the growth mindset, where you always extend, but essentially it's this term called desirable difficulty, right? Which is, it's only when you're faced with a certain level of challenge that pushes you to have to find an outcome that actually breeds that innovation and creativity in you. And you look through history and it's only when, necessity breeds innovation, a common phrase, but it's not just limited to companies and innovation and developing the next thing that will save, whether it's agriculture or when technology came about. It is in every individual where, understandably, and I see it in my parents and their generation as well, that they've suffered hardships that were out of their control. Idi Amin, for example, and across the world, Iranian history, Cameroonian history, wherever it is, there's been moments in my parents' generation where they've gone through hardships that they didn't intend to go through. So they want to limit that for their children's generation, which is great. But at the same time, you're right that when they're not faced with having to deal with any kind of desirable difficulty, it just means, like you say, that when a significant enough challenge does come about, who knows if they have the mental and psychological resource to be able to handle it.
They have a tough time because it's a different type of challenge. There is too much information, so it can drown you. You have the encroaching artificial intelligence, which is going to turn our world upside down. So I'm not oblivious to the fact that they have their own challenges, which manifest as anxiety, depression, panic, all sorts of things. So it's like each generation comes with its own problems, but existentially, whether it's a mental problem, a physical problem, an economic problem. I think what we should encourage in each other, and it's not age specific, we need to do it at all age groups, is to remain very nimble and flexible. And I think one of the strengths of our community is that we're like chameleons, because we've got to straddle 3 identities. For us, maybe for the new generation, is 2 identities. For us, it's East African, Indian, and British. And for me, it was a 4th one because I spent 25 years in Asia. So when you straddle, you're like constantly dancing.
Right.
And that keeps you nimble. And if you're just only wearing one identity, you become like a tree. You know, you don't move, and you become quite stultified.